Everyone froze. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough. Enough for the air to change. Enough for the room to hesitate. Every eye didn't turn at once. That would be too obvious. Instead, heads shifted slowly. Attention leaned in without permission. Heartbeat skipped just slightly. And in that near silence as something moved, you felt it before you understood it. That tightening in the chest. That subtle pressure behind the eyes. Fear, maybe. Curiosity, definitely. That's the moment the world senses an anomaly. Not someone loud. Not someone reckless. Not someone desperate to be seen. Someone dangerous for a quieter reason. They see. They don't scan the room. They read it. They don't react, they calculate. They don't follow the lines drawn for them. They redraw them. People. You hear the whispers before you register the words. Low, controlled, instinctive. Yeah, that's him. The room feels heavier now. Not because anything visible changed, but because everyone knows something did. Bull smiles stay in place, nods continue. Polite rhythms pretend nothing shifted, but it has. People feel smaller when certainty leaves the room. And the most intoxicating thing you can witness is the moment people realize they no longer understand what's about to happen. Because power doesn't announce itself. Power arrives quietly. It watches, it listens, it waits. And when it moves, it's already too late to stop it. You reading this, scrolling, absorbing. You feel it too, that pull. That uncomfortable question forming before you can shut it down. Why does this feel familiar? You try to brush it off. You tell yourself it's just words, just atmosphere. But you felt this before. In moments when routine felt suffocating, when normal life felt like slow suffocation, when safe felt like a cage with soft padding. You were never angry for no reason. You were never restless without cause. You sensed there was more intensity, more control, more consequence. Picture a single moment, not dramatic, not cinematic. Just one decision made without hesitation. A move others delay, a step others overthink, a silence others fill with noise, and suddenly, everything tilts. People pause, they evaluate, they lean in. Recognition doesn't explode, it settles. That's the thrill. And the terror. Because the world doesn't reward those who wait patiently. It rewards those who move, while everyone else negotiates with fear. The world resists people like that. It mocks them, labels them arrogant, calls them dangerous. Because unpredictable individuals threaten the illusion of control. And that's where the story actually starts. Not when you succeed, not when you're applauded, but when the cage rattles. When you stop shrinking to fit expectations. When comfort begins to feel like betrayal. Think about how many times you played small. How often you waited for permission. How many opportunities passed while you prepared. That bitterness you buried. That frustration you masked. That wasn't weakness. That was unused force. Fear sharpens it. Fear strips fantasy. It removes excuses. It shows you what actually matters. The moment you stop fearing fear is the moment it stops controlling you. And here's the truth no one says out loud. This isn't about being seen. It's about waking up the part of you that refuses to sleep through life. The part that understands rules exist to be challenged, that comfort is a negotiation with decay. That pressure creates clarity. The storm isn't approaching, it's already here. Most people freeze when it arrives. They look for instructions. They wait for signals. They hope someone else moves first. Awareness is the rarest weapon. Most people walk blindfolded, guided by habits, managed by routine, controlled by fear of judgment. You aren't. You notice tone shifts. Energy changes, unspoken tension. You see cracks in systems others trust blindly. You recognize opportunities hidden behind chaos. And once you see them, you don't apologize for acting. Because waiting doesn't preserve opportunity, it suffocates it. Action is violent by nature. It disrupts balance and exposes weakness. It creates reaction. That's why it works. Every moment that mattered began with someone willing to move, while others stood still pretending to think. Fear isn't an obstacle. Fear is confirmation. It tells you the stakes are real, that something meaningful is within reach. Comfort is slow death. Risk is controlled life. And when you finally move, not impulsively, but deliberately, the tension breaks. Not loudly, not immediately, but unmistakably. People feel it before they admit it. The whispers change tone. Yeah, that's him. But understand this, being the one isn't a reward. It's a responsibility, a battlefield disguised as opportunity. Every move scrutinized, every weakness tested, every pause interpreted. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. They want results without exposure, power without pressure, recognition without risk. But you stepped into the storm knowingly. No half measures, no escape plans, no soft exits. Strategy becomes instinct. Patience becomes dominance. You observe patterns others miss. You wait while impatience reveals mistakes. You strike only when outcomes become inevitable. Because power doesn't belong to those who shout. It belongs to those who choose their moment. And when the moment breaks, when doubt collapses into awareness, you don't celebrate, you don't explain. You simply stand because you already knew. The power was never external, never granted, never borrowed. It was internal, controlled, earned. The room doesn't erupt, it recalibrates. Reality adjusts. And the truth settles unavoidable. Yeah, he's the one. Yeah, he's the one. Bull. But here's what no one tells you about that moment. The recognition doesn't bring relief. It doesn't bring peace. It doesn't slow things down. It tightens everything. Because the second the world senses certainty, it reacts. Eyes don't just watch anymore, they measure. Silence doesn't just exist, it waits. Every movement becomes a signal. Every pause becomes a question. This is where weak minds crack. Because being noticed is easy. Being watched is pressure. And pressure exposes everything. You feel it immediately. The weight, the shift, the invisible recalibration happening around you. People adjust their posture. Their tone changes. Their confidence wavers. Some grow curious. Some grow threatened. Some smile while planning distance. This is the real test. Not the rise, not the entry, but the aftermath. Because now the room isn't neutral anymore. Now it's a field. And everyone is choosing a side. Consciously or not, you don't react. You never react. Reaction is for those who don't understand the game. You observe. You let them reveal themselves. The insecure ones overcompensate. The arrogant ones underestimate. The quiet ones calculate. And you catalog everything. Because power isn't chaos, it's clarity under pressure. This is where most people self-destruct. They rush to prove. They rush to dominate. They rush to confirm the whispers. They don't realize the moment whispers become noise, power evaporates. You don't chase validation. You let gravity do its work. The world leans toward certainty naturally. You stay grounded. Calm becomes unsettling. Silence becomes louder than words. And that's when they start to feel it. Not admiration, dependence. Because certainty creates orientation. People want to know where to stand when someone like you enters the equation. You become a reference point. And reference points attract tension. Challenges don't arrive as attacks. They arrive as tests. Subtle resistance, delayed cooperation, passive aggression disguised as professionalism. You recognize it instantly. This is an opposition. This is verification. The world checks strength the only way it knows how, by pushing. And this is where the difference becomes permanent. You don't push back emotionally. You don't defend verbally. You don't explain strategically. You respond with consistency, with restraint, with precision. Because dominance isn't loud, it's reliable. Every action aligns. Every word carries weight. Every silence communicates intent. They start to realize something unsettling. You're not trying to win. You're building inevitability. That's when fear changes shape. It stops being visible panic. It becomes internal tension. Because now they understand. You're not reacting to the moment. You're shaping it. Time works differently around people like that. Deadlines bend, urgency shifts, momentum redirects. You don't hurry. You let impatience expose weaknesses. You let urgency force mistakes. You let pressure separate the prepared from the pretending. When you finally move, it's surgical, decisive, irreversible, not dramatic, effective. This is when the whispers change again. Not curiosity, not speculation. Acknowledgement. They stop asking if. They start asking how long? How long before he takes control? How long before this becomes his territory? How long before resistance becomes pointless? You don't enjoy this phase. You respect it. Because this is where complacency kills kings. Power attracts challengers like light attracts insects. Some come to test you. Some come to learn. Some come to feed. You give each exactly what they deserve. Tests are answered calmly. Learners are ignored until useful. Parasites are starved without confrontation. You don't eliminate threats emotionally. You outgrow them structurally. And here's the truth most never realize. The strongest move is not confrontation. It's replacement. You don't destroy the old system. You render it irrelevant. You introduce something cleaner, more efficient, more controlled. And suddenly resistance feels outdated. People don't fight change when it works better, they adapt. They align. They submit quietly. That's when leadership stops being positional and becomes gravitational. You don't need to assert authority. It's assumed. You don't need to demand respect. It arrives. Because consistency beats intensity every time. And now the field changes again. New players emerge. Some admire, some resent, some plot. You welcome none and fear none. Because your identity isn't dependent on reaction. You are not the storm. You are the pressure system that creates storms, and pressure doesn't announce itself. It builds silently, relentlessly, until movement becomes inevitable. This is the stage where legends are either made permanent or erased by ego. You choose restraint. You choose long-term dominance over short-term gratification. You understand something others don't. Winning a moment is easy. Owning an error requires patience. So you slow down, you refine, you remove unnecessary motion. Every action becomes deliberate. Every word becomes intentional. You don't talk about vision. You embody it. People begin to mirror you unconsciously. Speech patterns shift. Decision-making tightens. Standards rise. You don't force discipline. Your presence demands it. This is when isolation begins. Not loneliness, separation, because very few can operate at this level without losing themselves. You stop explaining your choices. You stop defending your silence. You stop justifying your pace. You understand now. Not everyone deserves access. Not everyone can be trusted with proximity. Distance becomes strategy, and solitude becomes power. This is where the final transformation happens. The moment when ambition dissolves and inevitability takes its place. You're no longer chasing outcomes. Outcomes are adjusting around you. People stop challenging you openly. They start negotiating internally. That's when the final realization hits them. You're not a phase. You're not a disruption. You're the new constant, and constants reshape reality. This is where fear disappears completely. Not because there's nothing to lose, but because you've already accepted the cost. You don't flinch. You don't hesitate. You don't retreat. You advance with calm certainty. And when the final test arrives, well, because it always does, you don't rise to meet it. You let it rise to you, and it fails. Quietly, decisively, without spectacle. That's when silence fills the room again. But this silence is different. This silence isn't curiosity, it's respect. They don't whisper anymore. They state it. Without hesitation, without irony, without doubt. He's the one. And this time, they're not guessing. They're acknowledging reality. You don't smile. You don't celebrate. You don't pause. Because this was never about arrival. This was about alignment. You didn't become something new. You removed everything false, and what remained was always inevitable. The edge is no longer sharp. It's stable. The storm no longer rages. It obeys, and the world, finally understanding its place, moves accordingly. This isn't the end. This is the position. And from here, everything bends.